How's it going, everybody? So, I want to get this going. Been waiting a long time for this. Been having this idea in my head for quite a while now as far as how I want to get this channel really going. Of course, you guys might have seen I have a few previous videos, but with so many life changes going on, it was really tough to get to a point to where I could really put in the time that I wanted to put in. Well, finally, we have come to the time that I can do this. I've gotten a lot of the equipment that I want to get, at least to get started, and I'm able to really start up with these videos. We're going to start off the first month or so. I'm hoping to get these all in about 4 weeks, 5 weeks at the most, I hope. So what I want to start off with is talking about my trip to Japan. And I'm going to split this up into different segments. Today we're going to talk about the planning that you would need to do. I and my wife did to help plan my trip. These are just some things that you really want to do to get your everything planned out to where when you get there you can enjoy it. So we want to get rid of all the hard stuff in the beginning, right? So that being said, I want to talk about the time frame and stuff that you can do this. Now, the first thing we want to talk about is when should you start planning your trip? Of course, if you might have some ideas already in your head, some videos that you've seen, some of the places that you particularly want to go to in Japan while you're there. This was something that I had already started doing at least a few years ago. I had started looking at the different places I wanted to go to, so I had kind of an idea. But as far as actual time frame, when you want to start doing things online, your reservations, and looking at the places that you want to go and what the requirements are for when you need to reserve. Of course, with your plane, you really want to go about, as far out as you can. Get that taken care of. But as far as your stuff while you're there, a lot of the places there, as far as events and stuff, which I'll go into a little more detail later, you need to do at least 3 months in advance. So I would always tell people, look about 6 months in advance as far as starting to plan what you're going to be doing as far as your events that you're going to be doing there, as well as transportation. Look at some of the things which I will get into as well when I get into that. How I'm going to go about this from here on out is I'm going to separate this video into a few different sections. First thing we're going to start off with is transportation. We want to go into the different types of transportation you're going to use to get there and back, and as well as what you're going to use while you're there. We're also going to talk about accommodations. We're going to go into event planning. We're going to do what food and retail that you can expect there. We're also going to talk about staying connected while you're there. And then the last thing I will cover is accessibility while you're there. There are some things there for people who may need help while they're there. Some things that'll help you that are just everyday things in Japan that'll help you get around. So that's where we're going to break it down in this video. So the first thing we're going to talk about is transportation. We're going to talk about transportation to Japan as well as in Japan while you're there, and some of the things to look out for. As far as getting to Japan, of course, the earlier you can get your flight, the better. Now, when a lot of people hear that I've gone to Japan and they're like, wow, that must have been really expensive. Because, you look at a lot of these websites and everything like that, and you're looking at round trip from where you live, and you're looking at $1,300, $1,500, for a round trip flight. And you're like thinking, wow, that's already a kind of an expensive start. Well, there are some tricks, and thankfully my wife was the one that found it for me, and it actually helped me out when looking at flights, is that one of the tricks you can do is don't look from your local airport unless you're in a major hub. If you're in a major hub city like New York City, Chicago, LA, something like that, you're bound to find cheaper flights. So what we did was we got a flight out of New York Now, the flight out of New York was around $600 round trip out of JFK. That was like, wow, it's like about, 900 bucks cheaper than what I was finding online. So we just booked that flight as well as a flight from where I was living in Florida up to New York. That was like around 100 bucks. So altogether we're around $700 or upper 700s, so under $800 for the whole flight. That's, to get there and back. That really worked out really good in my favor, and it really helped out with the budgeting as far as for the trip itself. Now we're going to talk about what you do when you get to Japan. What are you going to use as far as your transportation when you get there? One of the things I can tell you for sure is definitely get the JR pass. You might have heard about this. It's a pass you can get for different weekly stints for different prices, as well as different grades. Because I was there for under 2 weeks, I didn't quite get the 2-week pass, so I got a 1-week pass, and just timed my planning as far as when I was traveling to different places to work out that 1 week. The 1-week pass, when I got it, it was around $320, $330 US dollars for 1 week, and that's unlimited rides on any JR train, whether that's the Shinkansen bullet train or any local trains in the different cities. You would just show the pass and you get unlimited trips. So this was something that was definitely worth it. When you look at a trip from Osaka to Tokyo, which I did, that was running around $140 to $150 each way. So already just with the round trip from Osaka to Tokyo and back, I already got my money's worth. That was definitely worth it. After that, I went down to Hiroshima from Osaka for a day, and that again was like $140 each way. Already I spent double just on the Shinkansen, and that's not including the local trains that I took, which I would try to take JR as much as I could where it was possible, but there were some times when it wasn't. And that's when you have to get one of the local cards for the train stations for the railways that are not JR. You might have seen in the background over my head early on in the video, there was a little picture of a card with a platypus on it. It said Ikoka on it. That is one of the versions of a local card. Now, even though it is local, it is something you can use in other parts of Japan. There are some restrictions, some places where you can't use certain cards, but I didn't run into that at all. I've just watched some videos that actually showed that there were some places where you couldn't use certain cards. I can't remember off the top of my head which ones they were and where it was, but that's something to look into. Just check it out when you're doing your cards. If you know where you're going to be going, see where you can use it. But in any case, that was very helpful to me in just putting money on this card. Now this was still probably one of the more expensive aspects of my trip while I was in Japan, because I did get around. I went to a lot of places while I was there. It did add up. I don't really have a money total wise as far as how much I spent on there, but I did have to put more money on the card as I was going on my trip quite a few times. So it did add up, but it wasn't anything like astronomical or crazy or anything like that. So definitely get one of these local cards. The one card I was at was Ikoka, and that was because I flew into Osaka, and that's the card they have there. They do have a couple other different cards that they use in other cities. So look up those cards, and those are the ones that you'll get in those cards if you fly into Tokyo, let's say, or other places. You'll definitely see that there's different cards in those areas. I think Hiroshima has their own kind of card. I think when I went down there, I remember seeing that. So those are things to look into when you're there. And just to get back to the JR system for one moment, one of the things you can also do if you're going to do something similar to what I did, where your JR pass that you're buying for the week is in the middle of your trip, but you still have a bunch of places you want to go that JR passes go to. Like even before I went to Tokyo for the first few days, I was in Osaka, I went over to Nara, and I went over to Kyoto. And even going from the airport to where my hotel was in Osaka, it was like 35 bucks just for that ride. So what I did was I got a local JR pass. They do this in the different sections where you can get a local pass. And you could buy it for so many days. It's not by the week. So that's something you can do. And I end up like paying, I think like 30 something dollars for, or right about 40 bucks for 3 days. And that, first of all, like I said, just from the airport to where my hotel was $35. And then to, of course, like I went to the Kyoto on the Shinkansen, which was nice, only about a 10-minute ride, 10, 15 minutes. That was nice. But that was, I think, another like $50 just for that each way. So already there, I saved my money on that card. So that really, really came in handy for those first few days. That's something to really look into if you want to do that. That would be my other big suggestion for locally while you're traveling if you're before that time with the JR Pass. One last thing I will say about the JR Pass is don't get it until you're 90 days or less from the time you're going to use it. My wife and I, we decided because we wanted to try to get everything, early on as possible so that later on the money I'm saving would be for my spending money while I'm there. So we got my JR Pass, I'd say like 5 months, I think, maybe a little bit less, maybe about 4 or something months before my actual trip. So now what happened is I never got at first my pass, which I should have received in the mail, and I wasn't receiving it. So when I looked it up, I saw that through actually a video I saw through a YouTuber as well as some other information online that you don't want to get it until you're at least 90 days or less. Somehow it gets lost in the system to where they won't send it out, your pass, once it comes within that 90 days. So we had to try to contact the company that sold the JR Pass to us. And we were able to get to them eventually, and I got my JR Pass in the mail. It's probably like 2 months out when I got it, so it worked out all right. It was just another extra step I had to take because I didn't do the original step that was correct. So it added a little bit to my planning. So one of the other things I'm going to mention as far as transportation, and it's the last thing I'll really talk about, is taxis are very expensive in Japan. They're a luxury. It's not like New York where you get in a taxi and you can go pretty much anywhere, and the price, depending on how far you go, of course, it can get more expensive, but just within like Manhattan, let's say, it's not really that bad for taking a taxi. In Japan, on the other hand, it could be very expensive. So definitely try to not take taxi as much as possible. Try to plan your trips around places that are around train stations and that, which, trust me, in Japan, especially in the metro areas, almost everything is close to a train station, at least within walking distance. Everything I went to was easily within 15 to 20 minutes at the most of a train station when I walked. So it's not really something that you have to worry about. So like I said, unless you're going, somewhere outside of the major city areas, don't get a taxi. You don't need it. It's really a luxury. Next, we're going to get into accommodations. This is something that, surprising to me, was not that expensive. I was very pleased with how cheap it came out for the accommodations. So there are definitely plenty of ways that you can stay anywhere in Japan. I'm going to go over the 3 main ones that you can do. So the first one, which I did not do, is called the hostel. Now this is going to be the cheapest rates that you can get, mainly because you're in a room with many beds with many people in the same room. A lot of them sometimes do have at least a curtain or something to give you some privacy. They use a lot of bunk beds I see in a lot of the places. So this is something that, of course, is going to be really cheap because you're all sharing the same bathroom in a lot of cases, and you're just not getting the privacy that you would get in like a Western style hotel per se, where you have your own room. So that's something to look into if you really want to stay in a budget. If you don't mind being around other people while you're staying in your room, like if you're only just be there just to sleep and that's it, That's something that you can definitely look into, and you're definitely maybe more of a person that wants to really meet people while you're there, and do that and just have fun with other people. That's something definitely look into. I can see the positive in that. For myself, being it was my first time going to Japan, I really wanted to experience Japan itself for the most part. And just, when I went back to my room, it was just for me to just wind down, relax, and get prepared for the next day. So that's the main reason why I really didn't go with the hostel. The next thing I'm going to talk about, which is what I did on the first 3 nights of my trip while I was in Osaka before I went to Tokyo. And this is called the Capsule Hotel. You might have heard about this. There's different levels of capsule hotels. There is still, some of the old capsule hotels with just like the hole in the wall that you go into, which is pretty much what I did, but mine was a little more updated from some of the older ones. In the pictures behind me earlier on, and you might have seen a picture of it, the room that I had, it was like 4 feet by 4 foot, and then let's say just around 6 feet long, maybe a little longer than 6 foot, maybe 6.5 feet. It was nice. It was really a lot nicer than I expected. If you saw in the picture, there was a TV on the side, a flat panel TV, which I didn't really use because I wasn't really in there very much. But there was a little radio, a lot of like stuff behind me to where I could plug in my phone. The other reason why I was happy that I stayed there at the early part of my trip was because from my travel, I was so jet lagged that I just passed out every night. So there was no issues as far as being, if I was going to be claustrophobic or anything like that, there was no issue because I was so tired that I just fell asleep. But that I'll get into when I talk a little bit more when I talk about my day-to-day stuff. Now, with these hotels, even with the hostels and the capsule hotels, I should say, you're going to have an area where you come in, you have your regular check-in office, and then sometimes you'll go into like a room, like where I stayed at the Capsule Hotel. I stayed at, it's called the Astle Downtonbury Capsule Hotel. Very nice place. You went in, you checked in. They gave you like your little breakfast thing that you get for the next day. It would be like some sort of pastry and then a drink. I think there was one other item that they gave you. And then you go in, and then there's a room right next to it where there's lockers, and you take off your shoes, put the shoes in lockers, and there's sandals that you take out. And you use that in the hotel. So that's something to look into, make sure you plan. And with the capsule hotels, they do it, each level is by gender. Being that it's a public type place where you're sleeping in a hallway with many other people, they separate genders just to avoid any kind of misunderstandings, let's put it that way. So each floor has its own restroom area with multiple toilets, multiple showers, multiple sinks. They offer you all kinds of stuff to help you out, like soaps and toothbrushes every day, disposable ones, even a little thing of toothpaste. Like they just supply everything for you. So this is something to add into your planning, knowing that, hey, these places are going to offer this to me. I might not need to take as much of my own type things with me because they're going to supply a lot of it for me. And that was true through that and the other hotels that I stayed at. So this is something that you can look into your planning as far as what you're going to pack. The other types of hotels is like your Western type hotels. This was where I stayed at. After those first 3 nights, the rest of my trip, I was staying in Western type hotels. Now, here's the big difference with the Western type hotels. As compared to here in the States, the Western style hotels, when you get a room, you're paying per person, not per room. So make sure you factor that into your budgeting when you're looking at it, because it will raise the price of your accommodations. So if it's just one of you going, if you're just going by yourself, trust me, it's going to be a very much a budgeted type thing. Now, even if you are going with like a couple or something like that, it's really not going to be that bad. I think once you start getting into families, then you're going to start getting into some more pricier type situations with your accommodations. So that's going to be something that you're going to want to look at. There might be some other choices out there as far as other than Western style hotels or capsule hotels or hostels as well that maybe you might want to look into as far as for families and that. These were smaller rooms as compared to like what you see in the States as far as a single like bedroom type place. To me, it was, if you've ever been on a cruise, it was not much bigger than a cruise room as far as at least my first Western hotel I stayed at when I stayed in Asuka in Tokyo. That was a very small room. It was very modern. It was really nice. It wasn't like cramped or anything like that at all. It was just very small as compared to like what you see in a hotel in America. But for what I was looking for, it was perfect. I mean, I just wanted a place to come back and sleep, maybe bring a treat bag, sit and relax, watch TV, and have a snack or something. That was all I was looking for out of the hotel rooms. So there was definitely nothing luxurious that I needed. And I guess depending on what you're looking for out of your room, that can change. So, but for me, it was just where to sleep every night. The bathroom was nice. One thing, of course, a little bit different with most of the hotel rooms over there is there's one faucet for the sink and for the shower. That was kind of weird. That was a little different for me. It was like a swivel type faucet that just swiveled between the sink and the bathtub. So it still had the shower like in the regular spot, but the tub spout for it was the same as what the sink spout was, and the sink right next to the tub. The other thing I will say about all the hotels is they keep these places immaculate. For the price that you pay, you would think that you're going to get some rundown in the boonies type hotel room or something like that. But no, they keep these things immaculate. They're really clean. With all of these places, whether you're at the Capsule Hotel or the Western style hotels, when you leave for the day, whatever you're going to be doing, they will ask you to leave your key there for your room while you go out. One, they don't want anybody to lose the key, drop it somewhere, and then somebody outside somewhere picks it up and says, hey, I got this room at this hotel, you know. They don't want anything like that to happen. So you keep the key there. And a lot of the keys there are actual keys and not like the cards that you usually have to open a door. Unless you're probably staying at one of the more luxurious, newer hotels. Overall, for the pricing on the accommodations, it really was not bad at all. If you're looking at the hostel, when I saw them, they were running anywhere from, I think I saw somewhere like $12 a night, maybe $15 a night, and up depending on how nice the hostel was. The Capsule Hotel I stayed at was right around $20 a night. I mean, $20 a night just to have somewhere to sleep. And it was air conditioned. It was nice. They had, a cover over your holes, so you had some privacy. And it was a little bit thick to where it helped keep some of the noise out. So it really was really nice for $20 a night. Have the supplies for you for your grooming and stuff like that. And just to have a nice place to sleep, get you that breakfast that you get in the morning. $20 a night, I mean, come on. You just can't beat that. But if you're going to do that and you are a little claustrophobic, maybe do it at the beginning of your trip. Like I said, I had jet lag and I had no issues falling asleep because I was so tired by the end of each day that I was there at the beginning. So that wasn't an issue. When I stayed at the Western style hotels, the different hotels I stayed at, they were anywhere from $40 to $50 a night. Like I said, I mean, you really can't beat that. Other than when I went to Kawaguchiko to see Mount Fuji, other than that, these hotels were in the city, and we're talking $40 to $50 a night for a Western style hotel with a nice sized bed, desk, bathroom, full bathroom, nice giant TV in my room. You really couldn't beat that at all. Also with the hotels in general, a lot of times the breakfast is not included. In the US, you do have, your continental breakfast, or some places actually have a hot breakfast and it's included in your meals, in your room stay. It's not included in Japan for the most part. I didn't, other than the little things they gave me at the Capsule Hotel, Other than that, the only other place I had breakfast included was at my hotel I was staying at in Lake Kawaguchiko. So that was the only other place. When in Osaka and also in Tokyo, the breakfast was not included. You had to pay an extra fee for that. So that's something to factor in as well. And one of the other nice things that the hotels do is they hold on to your luggage. When I went up to Tokyo, I got into Tokyo like around 9 o'clock in the morning, and it wasn't, of course, check-in time because that's not until the afternoon. But I was able to go to the hotel, drop off my luggage, give my name and everything, and they had a separate area where you kept your luggage at, and they were able to hold on to you for no fee. There's no fee for that, so that's something that's really nice that they do over at the hotels in Japan. Now I'm going to talk briefly about events. This is one of the areas where you know what you want to do, you know the places that you want to go, you know the shows you want to go to. These are things that you pretty much already have planned. The only things I can tell you about is mainly your timing. And that's the biggest thing and that's something I ran into. So when I said earlier about, starting about 6 months out, the events was the biggest thing where I think you should try to start looking at that, mainly at what these places have as far as time frames for your reservations. Now, most of them are 90 days out, just like with the JR Pass. So in that aspect of it, you're going to be fine. But I say just start checking about 6 months out, looking at the events that you want to go to, read the different rules for the reservations or timing, stuff like that, what days that they are open. You want to definitely look at trying to make the reservation as far out as possible. I ran into a situation while I was in Osaka and traveling up to Kyoto. I wanted to go to the Suntory distillery up near Kyoto. I was looking at the reservations for the days that I was going to be there, and they were already gone. Like it was already booked. So that was something I had to take off of my itinerary because I didn't plan it right. So I want to tell you guys, please start doing it so you guys don't miss out on anything that you want to do. Make sure you start checking out there, like I said, about 6 months in advance. And even though most of the time I said it's going to be 3 months out that you got to make the reservation, they don't do anything before that. Just in case, I would do it just to be safe. Don't end up having a situation like I did. The other main thing with timing is before you make any reservations in areas that you're going to be in, like if you're going to be in Tokyo for multiple days and you want to do different events on different days, make sure you look at the schedule for each event before you make any reservations. Here's what happened to me. I wanted to go to the Digital Arts Museum. I wanted to go to a wrestling show, and I wanted to go to the robot restaurant. So I made the reservation for the robot restaurant. Then I looked into Digital Arts Museum. That's in Odaiba. Now, I was going to do that the day after. I was going to do the robot restaurant, and then the wrestling was the same day as the robot restaurant. So I was going to do the Digital Arts Museum the day after. I'd already made the reservation for Robot Restaurant. I couldn't cancel it. It was already done and paid for. Couldn't do anything else with that. I went to the Digital Arts Museum. They were not open the day after. So I couldn't make a reservation for that. And this was something that I did not want to miss out on. So unfortunately, I had to make it for the same day as Robot Restaurant and going to the wrestling show. Plus, added on to that, this was the day I was coming into Tokyo from Osaka. So that day, I had to get my train from Osaka, which I got the very first train because I knew how busy my day was going to be. Get my first train, go to my hotel and drop off the luggage, which is up in Osaka, and then come back down to Odaiba to go to the Digital Arts Museum. Let's just say that day was the most hectic day. And I think the next day I had the repercussions of what that day was. So next time I go to Japan, I'm definitely going to spend more time in Tokyo because I knew there was a lot to do, but that was just, there's so many things I wanted to do. I couldn't put it into the 2.5 days that I was only in Tokyo this last trip. So it really created a crazy day. So next time I go back, if I want to go to the Borderless Digital Arts Museum, it's definitely going to be a little different this next time. So that being said, please look at your schedules for them before you make any reservations. Because if I had the choice, I could have made the Robot Restaurant for the next day out instead of the Digital Arts Museum, because they did have availability for the Robot Restaurant the next day. So I could have done Digital Arts the first day and then the Robot Restaurant the second day. So there were things that I had to cancel. I couldn't go to the Gundam statue because of it. So that was a learning thing a learning experience I have that I'm trying to help you guys out with. So just make sure you do that, all right? The other thing I will say is check on any rules that some of these places have before you make reservations. Now, for the things I did, there wasn't really anything as far as any rules that I had to be concerned about. Probably the most famous or well known, and you might even know about it, but if you don't, help you out, is if you plan on going to an onsen, check the rules for them, because if you have a tattoo of any kind, even if you have a little small butterfly tattoo or something like that, and you want to go to the onsen, most of them will not allow people with tattoos. A lot of that has to do with the Yakuza in Japan. They have been getting a little bit lighter. There are some onsens that do that. If you do have tattoos, look into that. And so in general, just look at rules that, for each place that you want to go to. See if they have anything that's going to inhibit you from being able to enjoy the show. Also look at, and I'll get into a little bit, look at the accessibilities that they have in that area to make sure that they can accommodate you if you have any kind of limits as far as how you can get from place to place. Make sure that, because a lot of these are in small buildings and you do a lot of stairs, they might not have an elevator. Just look at these things. The last thing I'll talk about with the events is check on the transportation in the area. Like I said earlier, if you're in the cities, you're going to have a train station within 15-20 minutes at the very most. Sometimes within 5 minutes. I had a train station half a block from my hotel. So you can definitely get from place to place easily, but in case you're going to an event somewhere, like if I got a chance to go to the Centauri distillery, there was a train station. It wasn't quite as close. It's probably going to be like a 20-minute plus walk, maybe 30 minutes from there. It's definitely something that you want to look at. Like I said, if you're in the city, you're probably fine. The next thing I want to talk about is staying connected while you're in Japan. Now, most of Japan does not have public Wi-Fi, so this is something you really need to look into. What they have in the most cases is either an SD card or a mobile Wi-Fi, or what they call a pocket Wi-Fi. And I went with the pocket Wi-Fi system. I didn't want to have put anything as far as any kind of card in my phone. I wanted to use that for more storage space. I went with the pocket Wi-Fi. Now, there are a lot of pocket Wi-Fi companies that are out there. Me personally, I went with iVideo. They're an international brand. They do for a lot of different countries, and I can't say anything bad about the experience at all. I was so happy with everything from the planning to how you get it to the performance of the unit. I don't have no complaints. As with any Wi-Fi, when I got into like some areas with more denser populations, it got a little bit pixelated in that with videos and that, but other than that, I just couldn't complain. One of the ways that I can't complain is they actually had really good battery power. Like these things were running for probably about more than 3/4 of my day before I had to charge it, if not longer. There were some times where I'd get through the whole day and it would still be fine. So this is definitely a company that I would definitely recommend. All you have to do is you go onto their website, You make your choices as far as where your trip is, when you're going to be there, what kind of unit you want to have, what kind of service you want, because they have different models that you can use for different levels of how strong they are. I got lucky because the one I chose ended up not being available at the time, so they actually upgraded me for free. That was really nice. That's another thing I liked about this company. That being said, what you did was you just did your reservation, and then wherever you're flying into, you can actually choose a location to pick it up. I picked mine up at the airport post office in Osaka. So I could just go up to the gentleman at the post office. I let him know who I was to pick up a package, and he got the package for me. Boom, I had my pocket Wi-Fi. And then dropping it off is the same thing. You would get a package with it that you would put everything back into and just drop it in the mail drop box and mail it back. So that really worked out really good for the almost 2 weeks that I had it, for like the 12 days. It was $40 for that. That's it, $40. So that was definitely a pro for I would say, for the trip. So the next area I want to get into is I want to get into the food and retail while you're there. So in general with both is Japan is a cash-based society. If you go to a lot of the mom and pop places, they're going to take cash only. They're not going to take cards. The big chains do take cards, so you will be all right there. But for the most part, make sure you have cash on you. I was lucky enough that where I lived in Florida, there was a nice place where I can get Japan money for real cheap. There wasn't really a big fee or anything like that. So over the months, I just got a little bit here, a little bit there. I just made sure I had cash with me when I went over to Japan. They have had to have more people get in with the credit card, especially with the Olympics coming there. They had a little bit more than earlier, but it was still very much cash-based. So that's definitely something you really want to make sure you plan for that. Also with the cards, make sure that your card is taken in Japan. My wife and I have a couple different accounts that we use, and the one account that we use, I would not have been able to use my card there. So I had to use a different account. Just make sure you check into that before you make your trip, because that can be very detrimental to your trip if you can't use the money when you get there. Also with the food, another thing is Japanese are very, I don't know if discreet's really the right word, I guess you can kind of say that, but they have some general rules as far as when you're eating in Japan, especially if you're eating on the go. If you wanted to, let's say you had a lot of things to do, you didn't really want to sit down at a restaurant, which I didn't do a lot of. I did a lot of street side food, stuff you can get on the side of the road. That's pretty much what I did. But if you wanted to sit down, of course, that's fine. But for somebody like me that was just on the run, one of the things I had to do was when I got something to eat, I had to stay where I was at and eat. They really frown upon eating and walking at the same time. So definitely keep that in mind when you're there. Try not to walk and eat at the same time. Drinking and walking is fine. You can do that. They really don't frown upon that. But definitely try not to eat and walk at the same time. One of the other things that in consideration with when you're eating on the run, and that is there aren't very many public trash cans around Japan. This is something that came about from an attack quite a long time ago. They used a trash can for the attack, so they've banned the trash cans in most public places. So, like if you go to a kombini, which is a convenience store in Japan, and you want to get a bite to eat there, the kombini's there, great, I love them. 7-Elevens, the Lawsons, even Family Food Mart, they're good. And you can get plenty to eat there for your trip. And I would just stand to the side, eat whatever's eating. If I eat a sando or whatever I was having, I would eat that. I would just go back into the store and throw my trash away in the store. The other thing I will say with the food is there is a saying that the Japanese do before they eat, and it's basically thanking for the food that they're about to eat. And if you really want to get the respect of the people in Japan, this is something you can do, and I'll just show it to you really quickly. It's not really the one part with the hands. That's the we're doing like a prayer. That is the old-fashioned way of doing it. You don't necessarily have to do that every time you do it, but that's the traditional way. And you're going to say, and I'll say this slowly the first time so you can get it. It's itadakimasu. That's what you're going to say. I usually remembered it at first by E, and then like what a magician would say when they reveal something like ta-da. So that's the second part. I know it's kind of silly, but that's the way I would remember it at first. And that's kimasu. So it's itadakimasu. And every time you're about to eat, the beginning of your meal, you would say that. And that is something that if the Japanese, while you're in a public place, hear you do that, they'll get a lot of respect for that. As far as your retail stores, one thing I did notice in the retail stores I went into, unless you went into like the big, like fancy places, if you went to more of the Japanese-based retail places, their aisles were very small. They're very much like compact aisles. They weren't like very wide. I don't think they quite have as many of the codes and stuff like that for how wide aisles have to be in your store like we do here in the States. So that's something that you definitely want to consider. Also with the retail stores, especially like some of the big department stores like Don Quixote, is look at the what's on the floors for you before you go on to them. This is more so for people with families, like with young kids, because I actually ran into, when I went to the Don Quixote in Shibuya, and I went there because it's like the largest one in Japan, and I wanted to check it out. I actually got to a floor where, and this is no lie, I went up on the floor, and on the one side was like bicycles, you know, for kids' bikes and stuff like that. And the kids' stuff was not too far away from there as well. And I swear to God, right on the other side of the aisle, not 3 to 4 feet away from the bicycles, was adult toys. I don't know why that was. That's just something I want to let you guys know, just to look into that before you go into it. If it's something that you don't want your children to see, that was just something I found kind of interesting, that right across from bicycles where kids would be playing, there was adult toys on the other side of the aisle. The only other thing I'll say with a lot of the big ones is accessibility is usually very good as far as if you need to go up multiple floors. Most of them had elevators or at least escalators or something where it would help you get up to the next floor of these places. Only when you got to some of the smaller places that weren't such big where you would have maybe some challenges. But even when I went to Super Potato in Akihabara, which is an older building, it still at least had an elevator. It was like an old-fashioned elevator, but it still had an elevator in it for me to get up. So that's definitely just a couple things to look at with the retail and with the food items that I was talking about. The last area I'm going to touch on is going to be the accessibility in Japan. The first thing as far as accessibility we will talk about is on these sidewalks and a lot of the walking paths in train stations and other places, you will see a yellow strip going along the walkway. And on this strip, you will see either like straight lines and grooves in between the lines, or you'll see an area with just round circle dots on there. So what this is for is it's for those that are sight impaired. It helps them stay on the path. While they're walking on the regular sidewalk or walkway, they're going to feel that straight lines with the grooves in between each straight line. That's going to let them know that they're walking along the right way. If they feel that those are not there anymore when they step, they know that they've strayed off one side or the other of that path. So that helps them out with that. And when they would get to an area where they needed to stop and be cautious, that's when you would have the round dots like a braille for them to feel and let them know, hey, I need to stop, hold on a second, where I'm at. So you would see on the edge of, or at least a few feet away from the edge of the train, and the train stations, you would have the ones with the dots on it to let them know, don't walk any further, you're a few feet away from, stepping off the train, or stepping off the platform, excuse me. And along the way to get to the train, you would have the strip with the straight lines on it to let them know to keep on that path to get to the train. So this was something I found really exciting to see for people that are sight impaired. This was not only in the big cities, but this was also in some of the small rural towns as well. They would have this as well. This is something that is not new. It's not something they've just started adding for the Olympics. This has been around, as far as I know, for decades. So this is something that they've definitely been ahead of the curve on with this. The other big thing with the accessibility is at their intersections and the roads. A couple things. With the regular street lights for the vehicles, you'd have the regular 3-color lights on top like you do pretty much anywhere. And instead of the green light, it would be like more of like an aqua blue kind of color, where to me, when I look at it, I can still see a little bit of a greenish tint to it, but it was more blue than green. And they did that with that, as well as the crosswalks, to help the colorblind so they can know when to go. This is something that was very interesting. Kind of a small thing, but it goes a long way. Not only with the color of the walk signal on the crosswalks, but also at each crosswalk, you would hear particular sounds. Like if you ever watch some of the vloggers in Japan do a video live and they're walking on the street or something like that, you'll always hear like these chirp sounds or just a beeping, electronic beeping sound. And what that is the crosswalks are letting the people that are sight impaired know when's the right time to cross. There'll be like the bird chirp sound will be for one direction, and the more digital, just like beep sound, would be for the other direction, so they know which way it's crossing and they know when it's safe. Like I said, these are just a couple small things that go a long way as far as helping out the people with accessibility limits in the community. As far as in the train stations themselves, other than the Tenji blocks that we talked about earlier, one thing with the train stations is all of them have elevators. This is definitely something that goes a long way for those with more of the mobility limits, that they can help them out with it. The other thing with mobility for those like in a wheelchair or electric cart is with the trains, the platform will either be level with the train, or they will have ramps available for when the platform's not quite level with the train. Of course, with the platform level, you just go up there, you can ride out. There's not really much of a gap between the platform and the train. So you can definitely do that. As far as when it's uneven, then all you would have to do is you'd have to go to like the customer service booth that's there, let them know which train you're going on, where you're going, and they would have somebody come down, get you on the train, like get a ramp for you, help you get on the train. And then they would also make sure that wherever you're getting off, that station would know that you need to get off the train, what train number you're on, what the car number you're on. And that way they can be ready to let you off the train, so it's more convenient for you with your timing to get off the train. They just go the extra step to really make sure that you're inconvenienced as little as possible on your trip, and to help you get to where you need to go if you have any kind of accessibility limits at all. This is something that really impressed me, and it was just something I think we need to have more of here in the States to help people out as well. So that's it, guys. Definitely wanted to share that with you as far as help you plan your next trip. This is not only something for helping you out in Japan, this is definitely something you should look at for all your trips overseas. Hopefully this helps you out. I hope that my lessons that I learned and the things that I got from my trip will help you out. That's definitely one of the things of this channel, is I want to help other people out with knowledge that I have. So definitely, take this with you when you plan your trip. If you want to comment, let me know if it did help you out. It'd be great to see that. I got a lot of information from people on YouTube videos that helped me out, and that's something I want to pass along to you guys. So I really hope this helped you guys out. If it did, please hit like, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you know when I'm putting out new videos. As I said earlier, I'm planning on hopefully putting out 4 videos in the next 4 weeks, including this week. And all of them will be on my Japan trip. This video, of course, helped me plan. The next 2 videos I'm going to do are the day-to-day, my trip in Japan. I'm going to split that up into 2 videos. Otherwise, that video, if I put it on one, would be even longer than this one. I know how long this one has been. The last video I'm going to do on Japan is passing along where I got my information from. I'm going to give you guys, the vloggers and that live in Japan, that got me the information I needed to know to plan my trip. Not only with event planning, but also with transportation, with staying connected. These are different people that I got information from, and I really want to thank them by putting them out there even more so than they probably already are, because they helped me out a lot. The least I can do is help promote their channels. I use vloggers a lot, so whenever I do take my trips, I plan on doing that for my series of videos for anywhere I travel. Is whoever helped me out with it, hey, I'm going to try to help you out whatever way I can. Be on the watch out. Like I said, hit that notification bell so when I do drop these videos, you'll see them. All right, and just pass along the word that I'm out there. After this month, I'm going to look at local places to travel because it's going to start getting warmer. We're going to be, by the time I get done with these Japan videos, we're going to be mid to late March. So we should start seeing at least some progress as far as getting a little bit warmer, having some places I can go to, and try to share those with you guys. I'm also going to have an area of my channel that's going to go with me trying to get healthier. Both my wife and I are doing steps to try to get healthy. She's going a little bit different path than I am, but we're both trying to get to that point. And I'm going to have an aspect of this channel that's along that, because it's called Roads Traveled, but not all roads traveled are roads on the street. There are many paths and roads that we travel in our life, and not all of them are literal roads. So I definitely want to share that with you guys as well, because that is definitely a path in my life that is important to me. And I'm not getting any younger, so definitely need to start doing that. But in any case, I hope to see you guys soon, all right? Take it easy.